missteps, putting her under house arrest, the terrible explosion in Karachi that killed 500 people, many of them her supporters. You know, she's seeing bigger crowds. She's becoming, again, a kind of hero martyr in the country, something she never expected. Musharraf's numbers are plummeting. Bhutto's are rising. She says to me, frankly, my success and his failure are now the same things. There's not going to be coexistence. It's putting the United States in a choice position. They've got to choose. And clearly they've chosen Musharraf over me.
But hadn't they brought her back? Actually, the U.S. pushed her back to shore up Musharraf.
That's right. Absolutely. But, you know, the fact is what becomes clear is that democracy, not our kind, but maybe their kind in Pakistan, really took hold in Pakistan because of the missteps of force, both, you know, encouraged by the United States and carried forward by Musharraf. And Bhutto suddenly actually is becoming the thing she imagined, maybe even hoped for, a real vessel of democratic ideals, which might have, frankly, have turned the tide in that whole region. You know, interestingly, at this moment, Bhutto says, you know, look at my situation. I'm now going to wash away the entire Musharraf power structure because the fact is I'm rising and he's plummeting. That's one opponent. Also, the jihadists are realizing that I might create a counterpoint in this whole region to bin Laden. So now I've got two enemies, of course, who have been in an unholy alliance, dictatorial power, messianic radicalism for many years, and I have no protection. Why? Because Dick Cheney won't make the phone call. We go on and on about this. She says, why? Explain it to me. The idea that they assured me Cheney would make the call to Musharraf simply to say, you're the dictator, make sure she is protected. She has to make it to Election Day. If she doesn't, we're going to hold you responsible. Bhutto at this point realizes she's essentially been abandoned because the U.S. has chosen illegitimate power over spoken principle. It's an extraordinary finish to her life of real clarity, and also clarity about, oddly, the power, truly, of democratic ideals if you actually believe in them. You know, it's an extraordinary story.
And what does President Musharraf say? What does the general say?
Well, there's an amazing moment where Musharraf, I have this, you know, from a variety of sources, obviously, is that Musharraf says to Bhutto at a key moment when she says, am I going to be protected? He says to her, your safety is based on the state of our relationship. Make no mistake. I mean, it's all but like a mafia threat. And this is something that the United States, frankly, deep down understands, too. They let this process unfold. And ultimately, folks around Bhutto now are saying that she was abandoned by America. And they're using Musharraf's comment, again, on the record, in the book. I've talked to Bhutto about it many times before she died, as a cause to help impeach Musharraf now in Pakistan and maybe even take it further than that.
Where were you when she was assassinated?
I had just gotten back. You know, it's, you know, I went to Afghanistan after I saw Bhutto. I saw her 10 days before she died, and I was just here in America, and it was quite harrowing.
When we come back from break, we'll switch gears. I want to find out about this cell under the White House, where one young man was interrogated.
Great.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. If you'd like a copy of our show, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. Our guest is Ron Suskind, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. His book is The Way of the World. Stay with us. Godspeed, You Black Emperor, the song Moya, here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Bush maintained there was a strong Iraq-al-Qaeda connection until August 2006. Here are just excerpts of his statements about the connection over the years from 2002 to 2004 to 2006.
Facing clear evidence of peril, we cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun that could come in the form of a mushroom cloud.
Well, the reason I keep insisting that there was a relationship between Iraq and Saddam and al-Qaeda, because there was a relationship between Iraq and al-Qaeda.
And nobody's ever suggested in this administration that Saddam Hussein ordered the attack. Iraq was the lesson of September 11th is take threats before they fully materialize, Ken. Nobody's ever suggested that the attacks of September the 11th were ordered by Iraq. I have suggested, however, that resentment and the lack of hope create the breeding grounds for terrorists who are willing to use suiciders to kill to achieve an objective. I have made that case.
Some of President Bush's assertions over the years. Our guest is Ron Suskind. His explosive new book is called The Way of the World, A Story of Truth and Hope in an Age of Extremism. Tell us about your assistant.
His name's Greg Jackson. He's a great kid. He went to Harvard, and he's been out a couple of years. And he was up in New York the day that I was with Budo in Washington, the day Musharraf said that about our relationship and your safety. And I sent Greg up to New York to do some sort of color reporting about demonstrations and, security precautions, because Bush and Ahmadinejad that day were both speaking at the UN at the same time. Greg went up there and was just doing what a reporter does, sort of taking notes, looking around. And he is detained by officials up there, including a State Department intelligence official, various folks in law enforcement, taken aside and essentially grilled for an hour and a half. They put him off in a kind of an area where they can sort of go at him. And they, of course, are very intent to know who he is. He says at one point, I'm Ron Suskind's assistant in the next book. They say, oh, really, what's the next book about? And then they say, who are his sources for the book? They end up taking his notes. And also, in a way, kind of threatening him, saying, look, we know who you are. They run his name through every computer on the planet, his mother, other people he knows, certainly me as well. And at the end of the day, they said, if anything happens up here in the next week, we know where to find you. This is a violation of Greg's First and Fourth Amendments. At the time, lawyers who work with me said, let's do something. I said, no, I've got a book to finish. But, it's the kind of intimidation that the White House has really made its signature over this period, chasing sources for people like me or Jim Risen at the New York Times, Dana Priest at the Washington Post, threatening them, saying, my goodness, if we get you, it's going to be curtains. And the fact is that in some ways Greg is a kindred of the opening character in the book who's detained under the White House.
Well, let's talk about that. Detained under the White House. This is a kid who's just graduated from Connecticut College.
Yeah, he's a great kid. His name's Usman Kosa. He's really kind of pride of Pakistan, one of the best students in Lahore. He comes to America. He's a great student here. And he's an economic consultant in Washington, walking to work. His office is just a block from the White House. He keeps his suits at the office, so he's in his gym shorts. He's got his iPod on. He's walking in front of the White House. He looks wrong. He's fussing with his iPod. Someone at Secret Service sees him. They take him down. They drag him into an interrogation room under the White House. There actually is one.
First they say rip his backpack off.
They rip his backpack off. People are running. They think a bomb's about to go off. Usman's pleading with them, saying, no, please. He says, I went to Dartmouth for a summer program. He's trying to throw out every credential he can. Ultimately, none of that works. He's dragged into this interrogation room. He spends a day literally in hell.
Under the White House?
Under the White House. If you go in the West Gate, down through a hall, and it's the classic with the camera and the light bulb and the cement walls. Usman really is sitting here. Again, he's a brilliant kid, and he's saying one wrong answer to these questions. It's like the flipping of a coin is the difference between here and me in Guantanamo Bay. In some ways, he's a kindred of many other characters whose fortunes have been much darker. And Usman, at the time this is happening, of course, I have George Bush just above him running through his day, full of official pronouncements about America's virtue, while Usman, of course, is beneath the ground, feeling the voyage of the damned.
Even though he's terribly afraid, he says, at least you quote him,